been these statements that we always have. We say character and capacity. When we do organizational recruitment and all of that, what we are doing is character and capacity. When we are looking for leaders, we're looking for character and capacity. When we are looking for executives, we're looking for character and capacity. But that had been in the reverse order for a very long time. That's to say, we've been having leaders of capacity before character. We've been having executives of capacity before character. We've been having relationships based on capacity before character. So all of those kind of reverse kind of attention to character development have made emotional intelligence to feel like it is not important, right? Sometimes in my country, a leader said, what money cannot do, too much money we do. So it's talking about capacity, no longer talking about character. So character has been divorced. Emotional intelligence has been divorced from operational excellence, has been divorced from quality management, has been divorced from risk management, has been divorced from national development, has been divorced from strategic advantages and all of that. So if we must definitely understand how emotional intelligence play a great role, then we must be ready to reverse that order. Instead of capacity and character, we should first of all bring character and capacity, and then capacity rather. In the university system, they said we are all trained in character and learning, not in learning and character. All right. But does our educational system actually provide us that platform to actually learn in character, or perhaps to be built in character before learning? We actually focus more on learning rather than the character. And it is the absence of having a foundation that lays emphasis on emotional intelligence that we have divorced emotional intelligence from our own core being, from our core quotient. All right. So it's important, therefore, that everyone in this class should, first of all, open our mind to learning all that could to emotional intelligence, and then be ready to apply all of what we are learning. And that is very, very important. That is very, very important. Okay, so if there is anyone here that has been molested in workplace, just know it's because of absence of emotional intelligence. If there is anyone here that have been quarreling with the wife or husband, just know it's the absence of emotional intelligence. So maybe after this class, you have to go and teach your husband or wife, your children about emotional intelligence. All right. Okay. So that being said, the foundation being laid, let's begin the class and then look at what we have here. Defining emotional intelligence first. Let's quickly look at a case study that will help us go through this. Please let me be sure that everyone could see my screen. You could see my screen. Perhaps let me just share. Be sure that everyone is seeing my screen. Okay. Please, I trust everyone could see my screen. Now I'm on introduction. So if you could see my screen very well, please, can you have me type 22 in the chat room? All right, some people said yes. All right, thank you. So now that you can see my screen, so let's begin. Let's look at this case study, and perhaps it will help us understand a little about emotional intelligence in the workplace. Now, Helen Anakov works as the Vice President Human Resources at Fortune Incorporated. She had been working with Kinship Incorporated previously, a competitor of Fortune. Helen notices that though the leaders at Fortune are intelligent and experienced, they have failed to make any considerable enhancement to the performance and motivation levels of the employees. Despite of having intelligent and bright leaders as well as employees, Fortune is lagging behind several of its competitors, including Kinship Incorporated. Fortune has a horde of employees together with its leaders who have an impressive work profile and academic background. However, Fortune still suffers from good performance levels, and employees lack motivation. Employees also do not share a good rapport with each other and their leaders. Helen starts comparing her current organization, Fortune, with her previous organization, Kinship. She finds that there are several similarities between the two organizations in terms of manpower, skills, and capabilities of employees, and so on. Helen feels that the employees at Fortune are more talented, skilled, and competent than those at Kinship. Yet, Fortune suffered from several issues like mediocre performance, low employee motivation, and so on. So Helen starts analyzing the root cause for Fortune's issues. She finds that though the leaders and employees at Fortune are skilled and talented, the major problem with them was that they had not been selected after being checked for their EQ or emotional quotient, which measures their emotional intelligence levels. Helen finds out that the concept of emotional intelligence has not been put to practice while hiring employees at Fortune. She starts to form a strategy to make emotional intelligence a part of Fortune's work culture. Helen decides that from now onwards, any candidate that is interviewed for a position at Fortune would need to undergo an emotional intelligence test. This emotional intelligence test would check the emotional quotient levels of the candidates and show how emotional intelligence levels and show how emotional intelligence level of the candidate. Helen also strives to have proper training and development programs planned to enhance the emotional quotient levels of the leaders and employees who are already a part of Fortune. Helen knows that emotional intelligence can prove to be a significant differentiating factor between successful leaders and employees and unsuccessful ones. Emotional intelligence is concerned with understanding of oneself and others, relating to people and adapting to and coping with the immediate surroundings, and addresses the emotional, personal, social, and survival dimensions of intelligence. I will go through this again. Emotional intelligence is concerned with understanding of first oneself and others, relating to people and adapting to and coping with the immediate surroundings, and addresses the emotional, personal, social, and survival dimensions of intelligence. Now, Helen knows that high levels of emotional intelligence can contribute to a better performance in several areas such as change management, self-awareness, participative management, straightforwardness, and composure, making people comfortable and putting them at ease. Then having to build employee relationships, persistence in achieving set goals, decision-making, conflict resolution, and proper balance between personal life and work. Therefore, you can understand that emotional intelligence plays a crucial role in the personal as well as professional success of a person. So having gone through this case study, we will have to go through this course one after the other. Now, something happened recently. One of our clients, an organization, we help train their staff. Recently, the MD told me that he sacked about 14 staff. And I was wondering why he could sack about 14 staff, because they really spend quite volume of money in training and retraining their staff. So I tried to find out, why did you have to sack about 14 staff? And one thing he said was very common. He said, yes, they have capacity, but most of them lack the character to be in this job. So I was trying to understand, how do you mean that they lack character? And he began to explain. And at the end of the day, we found that the root cause that generated the sack notice was that they lacked emotional intelligence, or they had very poor emotional intelligence. and he had to start recruiting afresh. Now, fortunately for them, now that they've gone through emotional intelligence and all of that, they now have to set an emotional intelligence test that you have to pass before you go to capacity interview or aptitude test. You have to pass the emotional intelligence test first before you move to the aptitude test. All right. And he had to contract that particular phase of their project or their organizational restructuring to a particular firm, HR firm, that uses emotional intelligence tools, emotional intelligence systems, emotional intelligence processes for their recruitment. All right. And I felt like every other organization should also adopt that. Adopt that, not that they are going to sack all of their staff, but adopt it on the basis of the fact that they need to focus more on character first and then capacity second. Not that it's going to be an 80-20 kind of ratio, no, but there should be a balance between character, or perhaps between emotional intelligence and capacity. All right. So that is very, very important. Now, sometimes from 2015, there had been some high level of downsizing in the industrial sector, even before COVID came on board. There had been some massive kind of downsizing. The truth is that I started since 2012. All right, there had been some increasing depths of downsizing, both at public and private levels. All right. There had been some mergers, acquisitions, collaborations, and all of that. And whenever you hear those things like mergers or mergers, acquisitions, collaborations, just know that some people have to leave for the organization to actually advance. So sometimes, having had the privilege to trade some people in the bank and those in the public sector as well, the most hit sector had been those in the banking sector. And sometimes when I try to engage the people who had been sacked, I ask myself the question, like personally, I had to ask myself the question, how did you first get employed in this place? And in most cases, I found that most of them that were employed based on capacity. All right. Emotional intelligence wasn't part of the basis for the employment. All right. So, and in this era we have come, that professionalism is gaining ground, and now more than ever before, the need for understanding consumer behavior, understanding the market dynamics, is becoming much more critical. Understanding how to build good customer experience is becoming much more critical now than ever before. In this era, the need for emotional intelligence has become much more critical than ever before. So more of performance appraisals are going to be based on the dimensions or the levels of emotional intelligence application in the workplace. And then performance is going to have a direct link to the level of emotional intelligence that we exhibit. All right. So it is good, therefore, that everyone begins to pay attention to this. And like I always say, emotional intelligence is like a new baby. All right. It's a new concept. It's not a buzzword, as it were, but is a concept that could place an organization, that could place an individual on the high level of life. All right. So now that emotional intelligence is beginning to gain ground, I said something the other day. I said the kind of research that is going on human resources, going on in psychology, it is bringing emotional intelligence to the forefront. So very soon we are going to start having emotional intelligence consultants in workplaces. We are going to start having emotional intelligence appraisal departments. We're going to have offices that are responsible for emotional intelligence. Last year, I was privileged to meet with the Director of Human Resources, Federal Minister of Education. And part of the core things we discussed in our meeting was the adoption of emotional intelligence, not just in the school curriculum, but in the workplace. How to drive the understanding and application of emotional intelligence in the workplace. All right. And thank God we were able to agree that emotional intelligence is still far from what we ought to have. But that notwithstanding, a work has started and the work will keep going on. I'm actually so impressed that in this class today we have lecturers, we have professors who are in psychology, social psychology, workplace psychology, industrial psychology, and all of that. And I trust more of the things that will be discussed here should be further given flesh so that we can have its relevance, not just for the knowledge sake, but we'll have its applications. Okay, we should have its applications. We should have its applications in the workplace and every phase of life. You know, sometimes I wonder if we actually have emotional intelligence in our countries today, and I'm telling you the truth and nothing but the truth, if our leaders have emotional intelligence, high levels of emotional intelligence today, in fact, 90% of the problems we face across the countries of the world today will cease. I think in April I'll be having this training. I was invited to train, or we were invited to train some leaders in Abuja, and that training is going to be taking a whole book on emotional intelligence. Okay, it's going to be taking a whole book. So that's to tell you that the nation is, Nigeria as a case, is beginning to understand the relevance. So most of us lecturers in these domains, let's begin to foster curriculum that will engender understanding and practical applications of emotional intelligence at all levels of the economy. It will help us a great deal. It will help us a great deal. Banditry, you will see it vanish. Terrorism, you will see it vanish. You know, sometimes I ask questions like, what they call them, National Orientation Agency. I ask questions like, what's their duty? What's their role? Okay, because the country need to be given an orientation, fervent orientation on things like emotional intelligence. Okay, countries like ours need to be given fervent orientation. Okay. All right. So it is important. It is important that we pay attention to these things. It's important that we pay attention to these things. And I will also make a simple recommendation to those, our distinguished lecturers and profs in this class. Can we have a way of working with the university advancement centers? I know there is this new program that universities have been running on, University Advancement Center, University Advancement Programs, continuing education programs. Can we have a curriculum that could drive these programs in the civil sector, collaborate with these centers, and then organize these programs for the universities, for schools, for civil service, as civil servants at large? It will go a great way in helping us, okay, as a nation. It will go a great way. You can leave the one of private sector for us, okay, but see the one of civil service. It will help. It will help. It will help. Now, why I'm driving this to those of us in the educational sector is because we already have a platform that will help us move the learning. All right, we already have a platform that will help us drive this learning. Now, take a look at what I'm trying to get at. If we have strong emotional intelligence trainings and applications in the university systems, imagine the rate of courtism that will drop. If courtism drops in the higher institutions, obviously, some of the social vices that we face in the community at large would have been reduced. All right. Someone could say corruption bribery, social vices are just at the fabric of the nation. But if we decide to uproot them, it will not take a day, but we'll look at it as a growing concern and then put up some kind of programs that will begin to drive these things. Okay, that will begin. In schools, we have what we call general studies, right? General studies. Can we have a way of inculcating emotional intelligence in general studies, all right? So that students could also understand what all of this is all about. It will help us, all right? It will help us a great deal, all right? It will help us a great deal, all right? Okay, so thank you so much for all of this. So now let's look at history of emotional intelligence. Does it have history? So let's look at what we have here. The major person that had written so explicitly on emotional intelligence is called Daniel Goleman, and his work has been backdated even before 1998, but there had been some revisions afterwards. So in one of the definitions he gave in 1998, it says that emotional intelligence refers to the capacity for recognizing first our own feelings and those of others, for motivating ourselves, and for managing emotions well in ourselves and in our relationships. I don't know how many of us will actually agree with me that life is all about relationships. If you agree with me, please type 1 in the chat room. If you agree less, you could type 0 in the chat room. If you agree that life, the beauty of life is on how effectively we're able to manage our relationship. You could type 1 in the chat room. If you agree less, then you could type 0. Okay, so there has been a whole lot of 1 in the chat room. Now, if it is therefore a point to agree that relationship is all to life, it can make your life, it can destroy your life. And emotional intelligence is all about how to now manage this relationship. It therefore means that we have to pay good attention to emotional intelligence. There is this case study that I went through about Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is the CEO, I think he's the former CEO of Amazon, and who happens to be the richest man in the world. As of the last time I checked, I think he returned back to being the richest man. Now, while I was studying the life of Jeff Bezos, I realized that at some point, Amazon nearly went bankrupt. And the problem was a problem of leadership. And obviously, we know that leadership is all about relationship, right? Now, what was the problem? The problem was that he was much more interested in result rather than relationship with people, a relationship with his employees, relationship with the stakeholders involved. So how people were able to do delivery, how people were able to get sales, that was not his concern. His concern was get sales. As far as his concern, just get sales. If you die getting sales, is not a concern. If you get hit trying to get sales, is not his concern, and all of that. Now, at some point, some staff started agitating. They agitated to some point that they will resign and even make public declarations and then make public reviews, negative reviews. Well, as of that time, it was a positive review anyway, because what they were saying was just the truth. So they will say their experience about the company and then encourage people not to get employed with Amazon. All right. And then Jeff Bezos had to sit down and then ask himself what the problem was. Then at that point, he began to look for coaches, and he got an executive coach who was going to coach him on relationship management and leadership. And that began another new turning point in the Amazon environment. And today, Amazon is one of the best places anyone could think of working in. So if he had not paid attention, or maybe felt like, after all, I'm a rich person and you could do whatever you want, if you like, work, if you like, don't work, maybe Amazon would have been somewhere struggling to survive. All right. So paying attention to relationships is very, very important. And then understanding and managing relationships is very key to life. It's very key to life. All right. Now, in the history of emotional intelligence, emotional intelligence could actually be backdated as far back as the 1900s, where Alfred Binet started up his own programs from intellectual quotient, and then without knowing, he was beginning to modify intellectual quotient to drive in emotional intelligence. And then in the 1918, while the first large-scale administration of intelligence tests to the US Army, and then in the 1930, Thorndike came up with what he called social intelligence, which is also inclusive of emotional intelligence. All right. Then Wechsler's moved it to what he called the non-intellective intelligence. That's to say that this intelligence was not a product of what you were going to study as arithmetic or logic or what you're going to study in school, but it was going to be based on behavior. All right, it was going to be based on behavior. Then in 1950, the Ohio State Studies provided what they call the task versus consideration. Okay, task versus consideration. We're going to look at this because it gave us a very good foundation to what we have as emotional intelligence today. Then in 1958, David Wechsler developed what he calls the Wechsler's adult test for intelligence scale. Wechsler's adult test for intelligence scale. Now, all of these were driving towards identifying the basic skills needed for performance in the workplace, basic behavioral skills, basic behavioral competencies that were needed to drive performance in the workplace. Then from 1958, Gardner brought up what he called the Gardner's frame of mind. I will recommend everyone here to search out for Gardner's 1983 publication on Gardner's frame of mind. There had been a whole lot of development, a whole lot of modification on Gardner's frame of mind, but the whole concept still remains the same. So if you don't mind, I would recommend that you check out Gardner's frame of mind, or frames of mind rather, the 1983 original work, and then check other updated versions. Of course, in customer relations today, we talk about Gardner's frames of mind. In human resource management, we talk about Gardner's frames of mind, because that helps to put perspective, the right perspective to what emotional intelligence is all about. And also helps us to understand how these dimensions or these components of emotional intelligence can be brought to real application in the lives and in the workplace as a whole. Then in 1991, the Salovey and Meyers, they coined the term emotional intelligence. So from the 1900s till we got to the 1990s, it was Salovey and Meyer that gave the name emotional intelligence. So if you look at it, emotional intelligence is just a baby. Now, Daniel Goleman now published a work on working with emotional intelligence, and he has done several other works on emotional intelligence. He had written so much on emotional intelligence and also social intelligence. All right, so you could do yourself a good by downloading this book. It's all around the internet, so you can get a free copy for yourself, Working with Emotional Intelligence. If you have a copy of it, you can also upload it on the WhatsApp group for any other person to get access to it. Working with Emotional Intelligence. It's a very wonderful book. And you can also lay your hand on Social Intelligence by the same author, Daniel Goleman. So the fostering and the drive that we've received in emotional intelligence started in the 2000s. So from 2003, there have been some very great drive. Companies beginning to see the relevance, and HR departments beginning to use it as background for running interview for applicants and prospective employees and all of that. All right. So if you check those organizations, they have sustainably survived changes over a long period of time. You find that at the backbone of the recruitment strategy lies the application of emotional intelligence. So they basically hire emotionally intelligent people and then build their capacities. All right, build their capacities. there was this saying I said some times ago, and I don't know how many people agree with me, but I said it with respect to emotional intelligence. It's just an adage. And the adage says that it is better to marry a submissive woman than make her hardworking than to marry a hardworking woman trying to make her submissive. Please, it's an adage. It's not a gender sensitive adage. So it's just an adage. Like, it's better to marry a submissive woman trying to make her hardworking than to marry an industrious or a hardworking woman trying to make her submissive. If you find out, it is always easy to make a submissive woman industrious. From my own point of view, okay, so another person could have another point of view, than to marry. So if you have someone whose intention or whose perspective to life is all about hard work, being industrious, and all of that, he pays little or no attention to relationship management. When you try to tell him that relationship management matters, you tell you, no, it doesn't matter. All right. But when you have someone who has been paying attention to building relationships, and you now tell him that it is good to build some level of hard work to make sure that your relationship pays you more, it is easier to have that person work on those relationships. All right. So that's the same thing that applies in the workplace. We should, in human resource management, especially when we talk about recruitment, I always say this, that recruitment is like courtship. All right. And then, recruitment is like dating. Recruitment process is like dating. While probation is like courtship. All right. So if the two preceding processes to confirmation gets to be done, then that marriage is going to be a wonderful one. So I give simulations like having to get to work in an environment is equivalent to getting married. All right. So because you basically go to agree with the terms and conditions and everything that applies to the working environment, right? So that is just by the way. So in the same vein, emotional intelligent people, it is better to hire emotionally intelligent people trying to get them to become high performers than to try to find high performance, then at the end of the day try to make them emotionally intelligent people. All right. One of my mentors told me something that has just a similitude to what I said. Sometimes he asked me a question. He said, who will you hire first? Is it someone who has capacity before character, or someone who has character before capacity? I said, let's assume it's just those two options you have. Who will you hire first? Will you hire someone who is ready to give you results, but not ready to uplift your company's reputation, not ready to pay attention to the codes of ethics? Or you hire someone who is ready to pay attention to the codes of ethics, and then you train him to what you want. And he said to me, leadership is not about position. Leadership is all about relationship management. So if you have someone who pays no attention to relationship, you will soon run out of business. Hire people who pay attention to the relationship rather than the paycheck. Pay attention to people who are much more interested in the relationship, business relationship, rather than the paycheck. And recently I was going to make a publication on what was that again? Making the most of your career. Yeah, making the most of your career. And one of the advice there is that let your income or let your salary be a capital, not a salary as it were. Make your salary a capital, not an income for expenditure. It's not everybody that may understand what I'm trying to say, but I want you to understand that particular thing I just said now. Make your salary a capital rather than just salary. For everyone in this class that earns salary, if you understand what I'm saying, it will help you. Make your salary a capital rather than just a budget to be expended. That is one basic career advice I could give you that could help you become much more profitable and much more financially free than any other one I could tell you. Now, if you are to make your salary your capital, what then will you do with the capital? Run your life on investments, not on expenditures. I will repeat that. Run your life on investment, not on expenditures. So number one advice is make your salary a capital. And number two is run that capital on investment. Run that capital on investment. That will save you a whole lot of, I don't have money. It will save you a whole lot of, I'm waiting for gratuity, I'm waiting for pension. It will save you a whole lot of, I'm looking for another job. It will save you a whole lot of stress, financial stress. The advice I just gave you is not a cheap advice. It's an advice that requires a whole lot of hard work. And it requires an emotionally intelligent person to bear the stress of the hard work involved in these two statements I just made now, and then secure his future through his career. You know, there had been this statement that your career cannot make you rich. Why that statement is half true, I sincerely believe that it is not completely true. Your career can make you very, very rich. Only if you could do the third thing I'm going to say. Change your mindset about your career. So emotionally intelligent people focus on relationship, not on paycheck. So change your mind about your career. So instead of looking at your career as a source of salary, look at it as a source of capital. And that capital should be what? Should be invested. What I said now, did it make sense to anybody? Please, if it made sense to you, can you type 1 in the chat room? If what I said now made sense to you, can you please type 1 in the chat room? I hope I'm not alone. Okay, so the root of the study of emotional intelligence lie in the work of Darwin, who proposed that one of the most essential skills of survival is emotional expression. Now, quickly explaining the concept of emotional intelligence as regards to practicality. Emotional intelligence is about being honest, being aware of one's own feeling, being aware of the other's feeling, and about being smart with one's emotion. So being honest with yourself, being aware of one's own feelings, being aware of the other person's feelings, and about being smart with one's emotions. Hence, emotional intelligence is concerned with understanding of oneself and others, relating to people, and adapting to and coping with immediate surroundings, and addresses the emotional, personal, social, and survival dimensions of intelligence. Now, quickly, let's look at the benefits of emotional intelligence. The benefits of emotional intelligence. Okay, so for higher emotional intelligence, you will see that anybody with high emotional intelligence has increased optimism. I don't know how many of us believes that whatsoever thing you ever can imagine is possible. Oh God. Now let me be very sincere with you. It takes high level of emotional intelligence to live a life of positivism. Yes. You know, sometimes for some of us in Nigeria and probably Africa, maybe sometimes you wake up, you just want to go straight to the embassy and go to the other country, to any country available. You just want to leave the nation. As I'm saying this, not everybody will agree with me, that life could be very beautiful in Africa. And Nigeria as a case study, not everybody could agree with me that life could be very beautiful. But the truth is, life could be very, very beautiful. So you just have to give yourself that impression. You have to convince yourself that life is good. No matter what happens, life is good. No matter what happens around you, you will still advance. No matter what happens, it takes an intelligent, emotionally intelligent person to live in such dimension of life. It takes increased optimism to see opportunity in disaster. If we have to bear with fear, if we have to bear with increased pessimism, then we will see much more disaster in disaster. In the midst of conflict, there are opportunities. So for us to exploit, explore, and maximize the opportunities within a disaster, within conflict sections, we must have great levels of optimism. There is one thing I love so much, and I tell myself that every time, and that is, it is possible. No matter what I am doing right now, it is possible. No matter the project you want to undertake right now, it is possible. Only if you care to plan about it and know when to start and know who to start with and know how to start. I tell you the truth, it is possible. Those that lack emotional intelligence lack the ability to conceive. And since they lack the ability to conceive, they lack the ability to plan. And since they lack the ability to plan, everything about what is happening is just disaster. A home can be turned to a paradise of beauty, a paradise of sweetness, only if we believe that it's possible. A country can be turned around only if we believe it's possible. When we believe, when we challenge our minds with the questions that will provide solutions to those lingering issues that we have. But if we have lack of emotional intelligence, obviously we'll end up with increased pessimism, and then we will challenge our minds with questions that will lead to further conflicts, further dangers, further issues of life. So, my friend, if you want to live in that dimension, that life of nothing bothering you, it is going to be a life of highly emotional intelligence. High emotional intelligence. Then the next one there is effective leadership skills. I cannot talk a little about effective leadership skills. Okay. Emotional intelligent people have high levels of leadership, increased leadership abilities. You know, for those of us that stay around this Abuja ASICs, every single moment you're hearing, win. They don't care who is on the road. They don't care who is on the road. Something happened some time ago, was it in Castina, that a senator, his convoy actually knocked someone, an Okada man, off, and the person died, and he didn't yet stop. What? But this young man, they call, is it Femi Bajabia Mela? He did something that really impressed me. I don't know him in person, but he did something that impressed me. Now, at another time, his own convoy knocked down someone, and he had to go and find that family, compensated the family, and even provided further incentive for the family. I'm sure the family forgot that they actually knocked down someone, and perhaps they could pray that he could keep knocking more people down in that community. That is an example of emotional intelligence. How many times do we see in our country that our leaders walk free on the road? I'm talking about including the councillors, including the local government chairman. They walk with so much noise that they don't just want any other person to exist apart from them. That is not emotional intelligence. That is fear. That is pessimism. And that's why you see our leaders, they are ready to do anything to keep that position. So they are after position, not after responsibility. An emotional intelligent person is not after position, he's after responsibility. And that's what leadership is all about. Then you now talk about better change management. Remember, was said emotional intelligence is first of all understanding yourself. then understanding others, then being able to manage the relationship that exists between you and the others, which is basically a function of emotion transmission from you to the person and from the person to you. All right. So if that is being done, it helps us to now understand better our environment. All right. It helps us to understand better in our environment. Now, there had been this serious mention that the problem of Nigeria is Fulani. I sincerely believe, and I don't stand to be corrected. I sit down not to be corrected, that the problem of Nigeria is Fulani. That Fulani has no problem to Nigeria. The problem of Nigeria is degradation in leadership. And that has brought a kind of change that the people don't want. So we cannot just finalize and give some kind of a negative affiliation to a tribe and say they are the problem of Nigeria. They are not the problem of Nigeria. Even before Headsmen started and all of that, Nigeria has had its own problems. All right. So I will stand not to be corrected that the problem of Nigeria is Fulani. Fulani does not have, they are just a tribe of people. So if they have their own inclinations, that's okay. Of course, I'm not Fulani before somebody would think I'm Fulani, okay? All right. But I'm just trying to be much more realistic, all right? The more we keep fighting what the problem is, the more we keep having the problem growing. So fighting what is not the problem will leave the problem to keep maturing. So that's what I'm talking about, all right? But now we have good emotional intelligence, will drive change that will better the whole economy. All right, will drive change that will better the whole economy. There is no way, and okay, in this one I stand to be corrected. That's, you will correct me only if you have been there. All right, there is no way the people causing banditry in this nation are only Fulani. There must be Igbo, there must be Yoruba, there must be Hausa, there must be Efik, there must be other tribes involved. There is no way the only people in Boko Haram are the north. I stand to be corrected only if you have been there and you come out and tell me that the only people, and you know all their groups, you can tell me that they are the only ones. All right. So we shouldn't use names, or we shouldn't acknowledge names as problems. The problem that we are facing, the change we are seeing in Nigeria today, is a product of absolute negligence to good and thoughtful leadership. That's the problem we are facing. And this leadership is not just on national front, starting from the home. Most of us parents have failed from the home. We have failed from the home. So take, for instance, in the Nigerian consent, we have the Amajiri community. Is it government that gave birth to Amajiri? No. The problem that we assume tomorrow that maybe could adopt Amajiri to maybe any of the terrorist group, is it government that caused it? No. There are some group of parents that need not to continue with their actions. Okay, if I say Amajiri could seem as though that could seem very common, but much more common is the one we do in our homes. When we don't train our children right, we are already providing a platform for a more terrorist community. Whether we agree or yes, that's just a simple truth. When you beat your wife in front of your child, you're already telling the child you can beat anybody. When you insult your husband in front of your little daughter, you're already telling her that manners is not good. So this change we are driving, it can be a positive change or negative change. But for emotionally intelligent people, they drive better change. They drive positive change. Then you have increased self-awareness. You have effective participative management. Then you have better health, effective conflict resolution, making people comfortable and putting them at ease, proper balance between personal life and work life, increased likelihood of promotions. All right. Then we have straightforwardness and composure, improved communication, building employee relationships, persistence in achieving set goals. Then we have effective decision making. Then we have greater success in career, stronger personal relationships, increased self-confidence, better problem-solving skills, effective human resource handling skills, and all of that. So there are quite enormous benefits to emotional intelligence. Enormous benefits to emotional intelligence. Now we're going to take a 5 minutes or perhaps 2 minutes break. Just stretch ourselves. When we come back, we'll be looking at the relationship between emotions and the brain. Please don't go anywhere. Just hang around. Thank you. All right, thank you so much and welcome back. So we've looked at an introduction to what emotional intelligence is all about. And then we've looked at the benefits. Now, let's look at the relationship between emotions and the brain. In a short while, we are going to open up the microphone for discussions so that we can also have different perspectives to what emotional intelligence is all about, especially in our workplace or in our workplaces. All right. Okay, so quickly, let's look at the relationship between emotions and the brain. So how does emotions get to work, and what is the role of the brain in emotional management or emotions management? All right. Okay, so we could actually say that emotions are generated in the brain and transmitted through the motor neurons, um, which gives expressions to the things we now say, do, as dispositions. All right. Okay, so the old school or the conventional view of the neurodentist about the process through which the brain processes information is that the sensory information is first passed to a mammalian part of the brain called thalamus. Okay, so we're trying to make this very simple, this particular aspect, so that it doesn't get to be very scientific, or it doesn't get to the point of nobody gets to understand it. All right, so this is just how the information of emotion get to be processed in the brain and then given expressions. All right. I will, by absorption, believe that we still remember our basic biology of brain, the parts of the brain. Okay. So we're not looking at essentially how the brain works, but just remember some of those parts of the brain. It will help us. All right. So the sensory information is then passed from the thalamus to the visual cortex. The visual cortex processes this information by comparing it with an individual's word model. The individual then eventually identifies the object he sees or experiences based on his word model. Then the signal are sent to the limbic brain. Further commands are then sent to the rest of the body to produce appropriate behavior. So in essence, first the information is processed. The sensory information is processed and then first passed to the mammalian part of the brain. And that mammalian part is called the thalamus. So the thalamus is responsible for processing of sensory information. Now, this thalamus then passes this sensory information to what we call the visual cortex. So the visual cortex could be seen as where imaginations are done. All right. Then the visual cortex now processes this information by comparing it with what is actually happening to the person's external environment. So it tries to make a comparison between the internal dimension and the external dimension of the person's existence or the person's being. All right. The individual then eventually identifies the object he sees or experiences based on his world model. So based on the external environment, the visual cortex tries to show or give an expression from the parts of the body that realizes the object within its environment that could express the emotion that the visual cortex is trying to pass through. Okay, then if that is being done, the signals are then sent to the limbic brain, and then further commands are then produced as behaviors. So if you slap somebody, for instance, first, there was an information that went into your brain, which could be referred to as a sensory information or a trigger. We'll also soon look at triggers. Now, that trigger came through or was processed in the mammalian part or the thalamus. Now, that trigger went through the mammalian gland, processed it to the visual cortex. We try to tell you, for any time this information comes, this is what you give out to your external environment. Now, remember, before you slap, there must be an object where the slap will be expressed. So, which in most cases is human being, right? All right, so that object in the external environment is what the visual cortex is now seeing. And the limbic brain is now activated, pushes the hand to release an equivalent behavior of slap to the object in the external environment. That is the relationship between information that passes the brain triggers the emotion that led to slapping. So slapping does not occur on its own, just like you and I. You cannot just be slapping anything. There must be something that will trigger slapping. There must be an information that goes to the brain, and the mammalian gland processes it, or the mammalian, the thalamus processes it, and then tells the visual cortex that this object in front of me is the one that will receive the expression of the report I want to give. All right. And then the visual cortex now says, okay, I've seen where I will express what I want to do. It passes this information to the limbic brain, which is responsible for triggering the parts of the body for their actions. So as soon as the limbic brain triggers the hand releases itself, and then there is a slap. Now, insult does not just occur. There must be a trigger that goes to the brain, received by the mammalian brain, or the mammalian part of the brain, or the thalamus. Then the mammalian part processes this information and tells the visual cortex that the report we want to give here is an insult. And the visual cortex say, okay, there is an object that will receive this insult. And then the limbic brain then say, okay, now that you have an object to receive the feedback of our processed information, the mouth, open and tell this object what we want to say. Now, if we keep doing it that way, we'll keep fighting every day. It therefore means that we therefore have to pay attention to what we receive to our minds or receive to our brain. And we must also tell our visual cortex what it will see, and then tell the limbic brain how to work. Our brain is not automatic. It only becomes automatic if you do not manage it. If you manage your brain, it is not automatic. It follows actions that you want it to deliver. But if there is no development of the brain as to process sensory information, it will work on an automated basis. I hope someone understands this. Please, if you understand what I just said now, can you please type 22 in the chat room? If you understood what I just said now, please type 22 in the chat room. I guess the explanation is not that big. So if you understood it, please type 22 in the chat room. Thank you, Professor Aremu. Thank you. All right. So it's understandable, right? Okay. But now that we understand it, I want to ask a question. Is there anyone here that slapped somebody this week? or you did something to somebody that you regretted this week. If you ever had such, can you please type one in the chat room? You said something to someone and you regretted. Actually, personally, me, I said something to someone this week and immediately I regretted and told the person I'm sorry. Okay, I got very angry and I said something to somebody and immediately I told the person I'm sorry. I'm not supposed to say that. Okay, so we have some people who acted some way and then okay, now what basically happened is that you received that information, all right, and the information was processed by your thalamus, and perhaps you have not processed or you have not updated your thalamus to the point of knowing what to do in such cases of trigger, and the thalamus picked it by auto. You know what? Those motor neurons in the brain that work by default automatically. So if anything comes in, they just picks it and they start working, except you say, wait, stop. If you don't stop them, they will just keep working till they produce result. So as soon as those information came to the thalamus, since there was no instruction to the thalamus on what to do for that, the thalamus automatically transmitted the information to the visual cortex, which by default visualized what it wanted to do automatically, and then told the limbic brain and said, this is what I want to do, or yeah, help me do it. And the limbic brain went ahead and did it. And immediately it did it, the conscience, that part of the brain, will now now listen to this. When you would have displayed the result, the information goes back to the thalamus again. And perhaps this time around, the thalamus will not just pick it and start acting weird again. Now it will become sober and tell the visual cortex, oh, I'm not supposed to. The reactive response of the receiver of the response of the trigger from the sensitive information that was passed to the thalamus, the reactive response could tell the thalamus, oh, this is not the way we wanted it. And the person will now feel sorry. All right. But after this class, it is important that we process information before acting. We don't just allow the thalamus to run on auto. If not, we'll keep running into troubles every now and then. Okay, we'll keep running into troubles every now and then. All right. Okay. So that being said, let's move on. However, a fundamental change happened to this conventional view of relation between our brain and emotions through the great research work carried out by Joseph Lodu, a neurodentist at the New York University. Then Goldman further carried out research and discovered that the role of the part of the brain known as the amygdala in our behavior. Please note that that part of the brain that is called amygdala. Just note it. The amygdala has its own special role too. That if the amygdala is not taken care of, it could result to a hijack, what we call the amygdala hijack. And if there is a hijack, it could result to madness, temporary madness or sustained madness. When you see someone run mad, one of the major areas of the brain that has been affected is the amygdala area. And if the amygdala area is not reset to return to normalcy, the person can run mad as far as the amygdala is under duress or under attack. All right, that part of the brain. Okay, so some call it amygdala hijack, emotional hijack, or the likes. Okay, when someone picks a knife and then slaughter another person, let's go back a little, please. Don't be offended. Let's go back a little. Let's go back a little. Now let's look at this again. First, there is a sensory information that goes to the thalamus. Remember, the thalamus is not responsible for actions, but is like a channel that processes the sensory information and then sends it to the visual cortex. The visual cortex try to create or try to find out what is on the external environment of the person who is now having this sensory information, what is in the external environment to receive the feedback of what the thalamus is saying. And in most cases, the visual cortex, if it is not handled, can also process some kind of imagination that it wants to see on the object before it will feel like the information has fully been transferred or has fully been fed to the object. Now, let's take, for instance, someone who receives a trigger and he collects a knife, and the visual cortex begin to say the report we want to see is death. Now, by default, the person will not rest until the limbic brain has, through his hand, killed the person. Until the visual cortex see the object as dead, it will not stop transmitting to the limbic brain to keep enforcing the order. So it now looks like it's a spiritual attack. There's nothing spiritual attack about it. All right, it's just what the visual cortex tries to see. Okay, and the limbic is like the soldier. So it keeps doing what the visual cortex says until the visual cortex is satisfied. The report coming back to the visual cortex said it has been done. Then the visual cortex said, okay, and further actions will now be stayed. But else, it will keep on with the action. Now, this attack could further be regarded as an amygdala hijack. Okay, amygdala hijack. So that part that leads to madness, whether temporary or sustained madness of the brain, okay, it's called amygdala in behavior. All right. So Goldman explained that the role of amygdala in his best book, Emotional Intelligence and Working with Emotional Intelligence. Okay, so I've recommended the book earlier today that we can download it. Now, the modern view of how the brain processes information was explained by Lidos. Lidos found that there is a smaller bundle of neurons. Okay, I've explained those things also earlier, the motor neurons and all of that, connecting the thalamus to the amygdala. Hence, the small bundle of neurons form a small pathway that allows amygdala to receive a selection of sensory information even before the information is sent to the visual cortex for further processing. So the amygdala could hijack the information that is being sent from the thalamus to the visual cortex. And that could result to an imbalance in thinking, imbalance in actions and reactions. Did you get what I just said now? So the amygdala can bridge. Okay, that amygdala can bridge real processing of the information. Okay, it can bridge it. All right. So that is very, very important for us to understand. So the amygdala can receive information and formulate quick response much more or much before and quickly than the rest of the brain has processed the situation and has delivered its appropriate response. So even before the visual cortex will say, this is what I want, the amygdala could have delivered the result. All right, so it's like the fright mood, the fright or the flight mood. All right, so this modern view of working of the brain with our emotions can explain our fight or flight behavior. People can formulate quick emotional reactions through the amygdala to novel situations. So things that are new to you, the amygdala can respond to them very fast. All right, the amygdala can respond to them very fast. And this is why experience plays a very key role in behavior management. Experience plays a very key role in behavior management. And please let me say here that experience mustn't be a direct one. Experience can be gotten through indirect approaches. Now, we shared a case study of Elin Anakov. You don't need to experience such thing that Elin Anakov had before you begin to build emotional intelligence strategies to make the best of your employee or to make the best of your relationships. All right. So we could have direct experiences and indirect experiences. Now, one of the benefits of having experiences is that when we have experience, it reduces the effect of the amygdala. So as much as we can in our professional adventure, we need to seek more experiences, be it direct or indirect. Now, we could get indirect experiences through reading, through trainings like this, through coaching and mentoring, through conferences, through effective relationship, through audios, visuals, good audios and visuals that we want to get experiences from. So it mustn't be the one you pay for. You know, when we're growing up, there is this adage that they told us that a sheep had, or in the sheep family, they had a he goat, and they had is it he sheep now? Okay, all right. So the sheep and goat family, they had a meeting, and their parents were asking them questions. So they asked sheep, the first one, if you are passing on this road, or if you and your brothers are passing on this road, and they kill your brothers, what will you do? The sheep said he will continue. They asked goat, if you and your brethren are passing on this road and they kill your brothers, what will you do? He said he will not wait to go through the road with his brethren for them to be killed. He will take another road. Did you get that? He said he will not wait to see his brothers killed, since he already knows that this road is, they used to kill people there. So he will better follow another road. So inevitably, the experiences mustn't be from you. You don't need to experience before it's okay, now have it. You can learn from other people's experiences. And that's why coaching, mentoring, attending trainings get to be very, very vital for indirect experiences. All right, so now what brought me to this is that experiences could help in amygdala management, or in the reactions of the amygdala. Amygdala essentially reacts to novel situations, things that the brain has basically not seen before. So the amygdala picks it and want to handle it by himself. Okay, but if there are information or experiences that have informed amygdala what the brain will do as to that, the amygdala was okay. In situations like that, please pass it to the visual cortex, and the visual cortex will pass it to the limbic brain, and the limbic brain will now pass it to the parts of the body responsible for the actions. All right. And why this whole process could be a very fast process, you will also understand that if the amygdala hijack is absent, the person involved could take a little time, or could have a very small time to recall his actions before taking those actions. All right. Sometimes we could be provoked to the point that we just want to say something, but we swallow those things. Why? Maybe because you have already heard such things before, or maybe because you have already told yourself that in the case of things like this, this is what you're going to do. Or maybe because you have some information bank that is now helping you handle those issues. All right. So this is very, very important. All right. Now, what the importance of emotions in humans? Many researchers, including Darwin, have carried out several meaningful studies on human emotions. Darwin proposed that human emotions, or simply emotions, play an important role in human life. Emotions serve a biological purpose, as they have signal to when there is wrong, or even or when our needs are not getting met. So I asked a question this morning, like how many of us understand or agree that life is all about relationship management? And a whole lot of us agree. Now, another thing I would say is like good life is all about good emotional management, or good emotions management. Emotions are like currents. Emotions are like currents. Remember, they are basically carried by the motor neuron. So in the human cell, they are considered as currents, like electric currents, right? And currents can be for good or for bad, right? So we can have current in our house and play good music. Of course, it is because of good current that we're able to have this class. Everyone in this class now has some kind of good current. That's why we're having this class. But at the same time, current, if not controlled, if mismanaged, could lead to death. In the case of high tension breakout, or in the case of electric shock and the likes. So emotions are the thing. If you have good relationship with others, it's telling you that the way you give out your emotions is well acceptable by the person receiving it. So there is transmission of emotions between one person and the other. Everything I'm saying to you, I'm just transferring emotions to you, and you're receiving them on your basis of preparation to receive such emotions. And you're going to respond also according to your level of emotional preparation for this kind of event. All right. Now, if the information we send to you here gets to be faulty or gets to be wrong, or the information passed here gets to be very negative, obviously you will leave this class without telling anybody. You will leave without taking an excuse. All right. Because your emotion is beginning to tell you that this is not what I bargained for. All right, that's not what I bargained for. All right, so importantly, life is all about transmission of emotions, and every one of us is a powerhouse for emotions. Every one of us is a powerhouse for emotion, and not just powerhouse for emotion. We are high tension powerhouse of emotions, and those high tension can be used for positive results or negative results. Why someone is channeling his emotions, the energy of his emotions to producing good results, another one could be channeling that same emotion to achieving negative results. And that's why the person that is killing and the person that is doing business, they all have emotions. Okay? They all have emotions and great volumes of emotions. All right. So hence, a person would feel a negative emotion when his needs are not met or not satisfied. That's very, very basic. So when a need is not met, the person feels a negative emotion. Or when the person's needs are not satisfied, the person feels a negative emotion. So inevitably, we could say that crisis is a function of emotions of unsatisfied needs. Display of emotion of unmet or unsatisfied need. That's crisis. That's conflict. That's misunderstanding. So if we could now learn how to manage emotions, obviously we will now reduce conflict, we'll reduce crisis, and all of that. All right. So that is very, very important. There may be various types of negative emotions that a person may feel, such as fear, resentment, anger, frustration, disappointment, and so on. And then there could also be positive emotions like joy, happiness, stress. Yes, we could also have positive emotions via stress. Like there's what we call eustress. That's positive stress. So thus, emotions are the manner in which our body communicates and talks to us. So a person's ability to deal with his own emotions may have several different kinds of social, mental, and even physical consequences. So it is crucial that a person should never ignore his emotion and should learn to deal with them. Someone should not ignore his emotions, but should learn to deal with them. Should learn to deal with them. Don't ignore your emotions. Learn to deal with them. All right? Learn to deal with them. All right. So basically, learning to deal with your emotions then have to mean that you have to go and work on your brain. So instead of automating the brain to produce negative results, you could actually automate the brain to produce positive results. Okay, so when a person tends to ignore his emotion for long, it may lead to unhappiness, depression, physical deterioration of health, and in extreme cases, even death. Emotional intelligence plays a key role in learning to deal with our emotions, 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 in learning to deal with our emotions. A person with a high level of emotional quotient has a natural gift of handling, expressing, and dealing with his emotions. It has been found that people with a high level of EI are healthier, happier, and enjoy better relationships with others, apart from being successful in their careers. Okay, so now we've looked at the relationship between emotions and the brain. Now, before we go to emotional hijack, which is a very interesting topic, I would like to know if there are questions. If there are questions, contributions, we'll take them now for the next 5 minutes and then we'll proceed. So the mic is going to be open and I'll be handing over to the coordinator. Just 2 questions or 2 remarks based on what we've learned so far. If you have a contribution, if you have a question, you can go ahead. Just raise your hand and your mic will be unmuted, and then you give your recommendation or contribution, or you ask your question, whichever one you want to do, but just 2 persons. So the first 2 hands up, those are the 2 we will take, and then we'll proceed.
All right. Many thanks indeed, Dr. Banito, for an awesome session so far. All right. So if you have any question or any contribution, remember we have just 5 minutes. So please indicate by a raise of hand and your mic will be unmuted. So the first 2 persons. All right. I have 2 persons already. I have Olutosin Debayo. So Olutosin, you can unmute your mic now and have the floor.
All right, thank you very much. I really appreciate this opportunity. I was just wondering the connection between the mind and the brain, as well as the nervous disorders that we have with people. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Dedayo. Thank you so much. All right, so let's have the second question and then we'll take all of them at once.
All right, the second is from Samuel Onyeje. So Samuel, the floor is open now. Unmute your mic and go ahead.
Okay, sure. I was actually wondering, thank you for the section so far. I really appreciate the teaching. So actually, I was wondering, I've been following you up on what you're teaching, and a place whereby the mind and the brain, I think how it works, like now you talked of when one slaps another person. Now you discover sometimes that when someone hits someone, like if someone should slap another person, most times these people don't react, they don't actually slap back. So what could you say that this person now who doesn't actually maybe slaps back, maybe he doesn't actually, what could you say that made him not to?
Thank you so much. All right.
Yeah.
So the first question is the relationship between the mind and the brain. Okay. Basically, the mind is the seat of reasoning. The mind is the seat of reasoning. The brain basically is for receiving and processing information. And then the brain is responsible for triggering the neurons responsible for actions to be taken. All right. Okay. Now, why the brain is responsible for receiving the information that is then passed to the mind? If the mind is not well developed for reasoning, it will leave the brain to take all actions. But if the mind is developed or the mind is active, okay, then the mind could then begin to think about the consequences of what he or she will be doing. So the seat of reasoning in the mind talks of the consequences of the actions that we take. The brain is responsible for receiving the information and then telling the part of the body responsible for the information to carry out that information. But the mind is now responsible for finding out this information that the brain is telling me to do? Is it worth doing? What will be the consequence? Should I do it? Should I not do it? So it is the brain that is responsible for that. And that's where we now talk about the conscience. So the brain, or perhaps the mind, harbors the conscience. And that's where we'll talk about the conscious and the subconscious mind. Now, where you have a mind that is only conscious, that means is aware of things that could happen to you in the midst of the actions that you take because your brain said you should say so, then your conscious mind can actively, at the moment, stop the action before it propels further. Please, Mr. Dedayo, I hope we are together. If your mind, the conscious mind is active, please remember, when we process information or when we receive information from the brain and then pass it to the mind processes the information and decide which one to keep and which one to throw away. It is a call up. So the mind is like the ROM, read only memory. The mind is like the ROM that calls off the information that it has agreed to settle on whenever such information is passed from the brain. So the brain and the mind work hand in hand. The brain and the mind work hand in hand. Now let's go back to that amygdala or the amygdala. In some cases, they call it mind hijack, hijacking of the mind. And your mind can only be hijacked if it doesn't have enough information to deal with what is coming to it. Like something is coming to the brain and the brain is sending that information and the mind doesn't have enough information to deal with that particular threat. It automatically results to a mind hijack. And after a while, maybe the mind will not settle. And that's when you start seeing people say, I didn't know when I did this. I didn't know when I did that. So for to reduce the risk of amygdala hijack, we must have enough information in our minds. Our minds must be developed well enough so that the brain will not just process the information coming in. It should also have a repository of equivalent actions to suggest to the brain when it's processing the information. And that's when you see people say things like, if not for, when somebody is saying, if not because of this, I would have. That's to say that the mind is not giving the brain a counter information or an information to balance the action it wants to take. Okay, so importantly, to reduce the risk of amygdala hijack, we must develop our minds. Okay, we must develop our minds. So the mind forms the repository for information that will, let's say, the flesh needed to add to the skeleton of information that is being received by the brain to avoid consequences. Because remember, it is the brain that will tell you the consequence of the action. Sorry, the mind rather. The brain will not tell you the consequence of your action. It is the mind that will tell you the consequence. So if the mind has enough information to tell you, brain, no, this is the consequence of what you do, and brain say, no, don't worry, we'll just face the consequence. The mind is okay, no problem. All right. So that's the relationship. Mr. Dedayo, what I said now, does it make any sense? Please, if it does, kindly unmute and let's hear from you.
Very well, yes.
All right.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate that. Okay, then Mr. Samuel Onyeje, your question and Mr. Dedayo's question is almost like the same. Now you slap someone and the person did not respond. The person is obviously telling you, number one, my mind has more information on how to deal with this circumstance than you imagine. So he has information bank to tell him when somebody slaps you, don't slap back. Maybe, I'm sure some of us have done that before. Maybe you find yourself that you are a hot-tempered person and you begin to instruct your mind. The next time somebody does this to you, don't react. Some of us have done that before. You actually sit down and tell yourself what to do. That thing you're saying at that moment, you're not feeding it to the brain. You're feeding it to the mind. You're telling your mind, when this happened, do this one. When that happened, do this one. So perhaps the person you're slapping, he believes in that part of the scripture that says, when someone slaps you here, you turn the other side. If that's the information he has in his mind, that's obviously what he will do. Okay. So does that make sense, sir?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Thank you so much for the question.
Thank you so much. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
So we will proceed now. Thank you so much. We'll still take questions in later times. All right. Now, quickly, let's look at this. But before I proceed, I will have to say this again. The root cause of national problem is family problems. And family problems, basic to family problems, is parental failure. Now, if you look at yourself, you've not really been a very good parent, then you have to start telling your mind. Now, you sit down and write your 10 commandments to yourself. So person, you call yourself by name. From today, I'll make up my mind to not be a problem to my country, to my workplace, to my family. And these are the actions I'll be taking. Your mind will receive those things. Don't just do it once, don't do it twice. Say it to yourself consciously until it begins to reside in your subconscious mind. And you begin to act in such ways. By doing so, you will reduce a whole lot of risk on amygdala or emotional hijack. And I'm telling you the truth. Okay, I'm telling you the honest truth. All right. And now, anytime somebody was telling me something. He said he knows somebody that anytime the person sees money, his hand will start shaking like this. Whether the money is his own or it's not his own, he just wants to take the money. Do you know the difference between corruption at national level and corruption in the home? Corruption is corruption, whether it is national, home, or occupational corruption or whatever. Corruption is corruption. Before anyone could go into corruption, there have been some levels of emotional hijack. Emotional hijack is so strong that until you do the will of what your emotion is saying at that time, you will not rest. Before you could hear things like rape, there must have been some great levels of emotional hijack that the person will not rest until he does so. So how do you counteract the attack on the emotion? We must balance, or we must have balanced information in our minds. Okay? The subconscious mind must be fed well enough. The subconscious mind must be fed well enough. Now, please, this that I'm going to say is not in any way an insult, a public assault, or derogatory to any group of persons. So please forgive me in advance. Day before yesterday, I was reading on the newspaper of a particular lecturer, doctor lecturer, who raped a 17-year-old girl at Covenant University, Ota, Ogun State. Someone could say it's a spiritual attack. I don't know. But the truth is that incident did not just happen in a moment. It passed phase 1, it passed phase 2, it passed phase 3, it now entered phase 4, like a point of no return. Someone asked me a question. They invited me to a relationship talk show. And the host asked me a question. He said, sir, what would be your advice to someone whom the fiancé, like the lady in question, slapped him? Will you advise him to continue? I said, it depends on the context of the slap. If the slap was to reset his brain, like deliver him from hijack, it is a good slap. It is a good action. Because there are some emotional hijack that words cannot settle except equivalent action. And those kind of action most often is slap. When you slap the person, his brain will come back, irrespective of the person's age, height, qualification. You have to give the person a resounding slap. When you slap the person, the person will run an exclamation like Jesus. Immediately he do that, he will ask you, why did you slap me? And then you explain. And the person will become somehow sober if the person is truly delivered. What I'm saying now sounds funny, right? Every now and then we'll keep having on newspaper a lecturer that has been sacked because of cases of sexual assault. We hear of police officers being sacked. We have security agents, army officers being sacked. It did not happen in a split of second. That's where the mind now comes to place. If your mind is not well built up, emotional hijack is very simple. Is very simple. Very, very simple. Very, very simple. Okay, very, very simple. But if the mind, especially the subconscious, is well fed, it will help. It will help. So when the information comes to the brain, instead of triggering, of course, it will actually trigger an action, but the subconscious mind will now begin to analyze the action that you want to take. It will become your safety leader, your safety guide, your subconscious mind. It will become your safety guide, telling you the consequences, the implications of the hijack if you allow it to proceed. Because hijack does not happen in a second. Okay, it happened in stages. It happened in stages. Before someone could say, leave my house, I am not interested again, I don't want to marry you again, it didn't happen in a twinkle of an eye. There would have been some levels of emotional hijack. Now, if you lack enough substantial information in your subconscious mind, you will always become a victim of circumstances. I will repeat that again. If you lack enough substantial information, substantial knowledge in your subconscious mind, you will always become a victim of circumstances. So to deal with emotional hijack, we must first of all build relevant knowledge repository in our subconscious mind, so that we can have enough information for the mind to process and know the action for us to take. It is better for your mind to tell you the action to take than your brain to formulate for you the action to take. It can be dangerous for the brain to lead you. It's better for the mind to give you actions to take than the brain to give you actions to take. Okay, so it's important. It's important. Now, let's look at it. Emotional hijack, the stages. If you are in this class and you are at the point of going to court to sign your divorce paper, please go and rethink it. If you're in this class and you're at the point of signing your resignation letter from your workplace, please go and rethink it. At least go and read books about the events that are leading you to sign those letters. It's very, very important. That relationship that you've made up your mind to say, I am going to quit this relationship by Monday. Please go and sit back and ask yourself, use your mind and analyze the actions you want to take, not your brain. Use your mind to analyze the actions you want to take, and then find out whether they are worth taking or not. All right? In the same way, that offer that you want to take, don't use your brain, use your mind. Make sure you have enough information to process that offer and then be ready to accept it. In the same vein, this class we are taking, yes, it's 100% free from every attendee. If you must get certificate, please don't just because the certificate is at a reduced cost or is discounted and now say, okay, I want to go for the certificate. No, You may have to ask yourself, is it certificate I need or is it material? Which one will be much more valuable to me? Which one will give me much value? Use your mind, analyze the situation. Then before you decide whether to go for certification, go for materials or not. All right. So this is very, 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 very important. All right. This is very, very important. All right. This is very, very important. Okay, so I read something here. It said resetting the brain from emotional hijack has been abused by some pseudo deliverance ministries. Okay, please note. Before you could actually exert an external pressure on someone you feel is having an emotional hijack, please make sure that you yourself that is exerting that pressure, you're not under emotional hijack. Because if you're under emotional hijack and you exert external pressure, the person will use a much more dangerous external pressure to reset your own brain also. And also, while I said you could use external pressure, that is not the only option. You could also use influence. Okay, you could also use influence. All right, you could also use influence. One of my mentors told me something. He said, if you ever come to the point in life that you no longer listen to people, then know that you are already doomed for destruction. If you come to a point in life that you no longer listen to people, you have nobody you respect or listen to, then you're already on your way to destruction. So at some point, in fact, we should apply external pressure as the last resort. Okay, external pressure should be a last resort, not the first resort, all right? So you should use things like participative problem solving, try to find out what is really the person's problem. And that's why sometimes you see someone suffer from an issue for a long time. Maybe an issue that would have taken 2-3 days to resolve, it would take him 3 years, 4 years, he's still suffering from that issue. Some of the reasons is because he has not found the right person to talk to. Now, there is something about the mind and the brain somehow. If you receive the right information right now, it will deliver you from every operation right now. Okay? Sorry, just a moment, please. So that's why we have like the psychiatrists. Okay, they don't use psychiatric counselors. They don't use cane. They don't use flogging. They don't use slapping and the like. They use information. Having the right information could save you from a managerial hijack or emotional hijack. And that's why I said that the best way to deal with emotional hijack is to, first of all, have substantial information, have substantial knowledge base about the subject matter in your subconscious mind. Remember, I said that. All right. For those of them that are using slapping for deliverance in the so-called ministries, please, we are not in support of that. Okay, I don't think slap is part of spiritual power anyway. I think it's a physical power. Okay, forgive me on that. All right, so anybody doing this kind of issue will be arrested by government, and that arrest will now reset the person's mind. Okay, so if you're under emotional hijack, anybody using slap to say he's delivering people and he's using slap, using cane, when government will arrest him, you'll find that that his hijacked memory, that his hijacked mind will come back to life, and then he will tell you, I don't know what I was doing. Then maybe the police or the army will not tell you what to do. Okay. All right. So what is emotional hijack? It's the occurrence of a phenomenon where a person's mind gets taken over by his emotion. Emotional hijack prohibits a person from taking a look at and viewing a situation realistically. The person under an emotional hijack may temporarily feel a cognitive loss of control, and can be very harmful. So someone under a mental hijack or emotional hijack can be very harmful. Why I said it can be for temporary and it can be sustained. If it is madness, then it will definitely be sustained. Okay, but if it is um, a temporary loss, that can be managed. Now, I would like you to listen to this. This will help. For every bandit, for every terrorist, for every ritualist, for every um, um, any other person involved in social vices, they have given their minds a kind of information that agree with what the brain says to them as actions. So those kind of minds are no longer the positive minds, as you know. Their minds are not removed. Their minds have been seared. They have another kind of mind that is made up to destroy. And to deal with such kind of situations, they may have to be taken back. And that's why we now talk about rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is recovering people who are under emotional hijack or amygdala hijack. Okay, that is very, very important. Now, in this class will be ending by 1 o'clock. Then we'll go for break and return by 2. Please let's know that attendance will be taken by the end of this class. All right. And please, everyone will be encouraged to take attendance, as attendance is part of the requirement for certification. All right. So to apply for certification, you need at least 70% attendance. All right. And you also need to send us your resume, just 1-page resume. Okay, your resume, what we want to see is your professional and educational background, essentially. Your professional background, educational background, and your work experience. All right, that's majorly what we want to say. So one-page resume is enough for us. All right, don't give us plenty. Membership at iipmi.org. Membership at iipmi.org. That's where you send your 1-page resume. Okay. But by default, please, it's important for everyone to know, for you to apply for the certification, you should have at least a degree or a HND. That's for associate levels. For you to have a fellow, or perhaps to have the senior levels, having a master's and PhD is a great advantage. Okay, it's a great advantage. All right. For you to go for associate, you need to have at least 0 to 3 years working experience. That could be considered. But for you to go for senior, you need at least 10 years work experience. 10 years work experience. All right, 10 years work experience. And these are the things we want you to prove in your resume. Okay. It's important to also note that the certification that will be issued will be coming with Society for Human Resource Management USA and the Chartered Institute of Management Consultant. It will be coming with their seals. So all of these things need to be approved. We need to appraise and approve before those things will be done, before you be enlisted for certification. But should by any means you are not qualified for certification, please take the opportunity and learn as much as you can learn. At least the training is 100% free. All right. So thank you so much. So let's now round up on this first note. So on the emotional hijack, we have stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So let's look at the stages and what they have to say. So stage 1, identifying the trigger. Okay, identifying the trigger. The first stage of emotional hijack is to perceive and identify an event that you register as a threat. That's number 1. Then stage 2 is feeling a strong emotion. Of course, when the threat comes, you naturally feel a strong emotion. So the second stage of an emotional hijack is to suddenly feel a strong, vehement emotion, which is caused due to the recognition and identifying of the trigger event by you. Then the third stage is reacting automatically. The third stage of an emotional hijack is the automatic reaction that makes you respond automatically based on the trigger and the strong emotion you felt. mostly such automatic reaction may make you regret your reaction later. This is because it is not thought of and decided prior to reacting and may have a negative effect on you and others. So a mildly hijack or emotional hijack removes the place of the mind. So if you look at that last point, it says the actions that you take, you might end up regretting, is because they were not thought of and decided prior, and the room, the foundation, or the place for decision is the mind. So if you remove the mind, the brain takes up the actions automatically. And then the final stage is the stage of feeling regret. The fourth and last stage of emotional hijack is feeling regret about your reactions. So to avoid this emotional hijack, like I said, if you walk from stage 1 to stage 4, you find that all of these things happen because there was not enough information in the mind to counteract the trigger as it comes. Had any one of us here ever for once, you wanted to travel and all of a sudden you woke up and you started having these thoughts within you, don't travel, you have accident, don't go anywhere, you will die today, and all of that. Okay, some of us have those kind of things. And someone could say, I'm not going out because I'm having a sensation that I shouldn't go out. I'm not saying you should neglect your emotions in that regard, but someone else could have another perception. So it based on the information available to him. I said, why won't I go out? I have already put all necessary things in place and I will decide to go out. Okay, and the person goes out and come back. And the person that feels like, if I go out today, I will die today, he can still go out and die that day. We've heard stories of things like that. Somebody's okay, I had a dream, and in the dream, they told me not to go out. If I go out today, I die. And the person did not go out, and all of a sudden, sometime he just woke up and decided to go out, and going out, he died. Whatsoever thing your mind settles is forever settled. Whatever thing you settle in your mind is like the seat of judgment. You accept death, you die. You accept life, you live. That's the seat of judgment. That's the seat of judgment. Okay? Your mind is the seat of judgment. 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 If you believe that you're poor, you get it. There's what we call the law of attraction. The law of attraction. The law of attraction is simple. Whatever thing a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Is it not? As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. That's the law of attraction. So if you think death, you die. If you think life, you live. If you think poverty, that's your domain. If you think prosperity, that's your domain. If you think health, that's your domain. If you think sickness, that's your domain. So that's just the way life is programmed to be. So if you remove mind from your mental processing, you've removed everything to life. Mind is like the actual software you need to run your life. And like I always say in most of my classes, I say you need to find the version that your mind is operating. Is it the latest version? If your mind is not operating the latest version, please, you need to upgrade. You need to do what? Upgrade. And I will tell you some of the characteristics of the latest version of the mind. The latest version of the mind is strategic. That's one of the basic characteristics of the latest version of the mind. It is strategic. The latest version of the mind is always looking at responsibility. It's looking at what to add, not what to receive. It's always looking at what to add. That's one of the characteristics of the latest version of the mind. Now, another characteristics of the latest version of the mind is that it considers you being solely responsible for the outcome of your life and not people around you, not your employer, not your employee, not your father, not your mother. The latest version of the mind sees you see yourself as the one absolutely responsible for the outcomes of your life. That is one of the characteristics of the latest versions of the mind. Please, if you have other characteristics of the latest version, please, you can share in the chat room. Okay, so, but if you now look at these characteristics of the latest version of the mind, and your own is not up to that. Maybe, not maybe, you just need to upgrade. Upgrade your mind. Okay, your upgrade your mind. All right, upgrade your mind. Upgrade your mind. So that is very, very important. So we've seen how emotional trigger or emotional hijack comes about. Okay, we see how emotional hijack comes about. We see how emotional hijack comes about. Okay, now before I proceed, I would like to know just 2 questions or 2 contributions to emotional hijack. If you have a question to emotional hijack, if you have a contribution to emotional hijack, just two questions or contributions, or 1 question, 1 contribution, then we'll proceed, please. So if you have any contribution or question, just your hand raised, and then we'll take it from there. Okay. So I have Mr. Joseph Ajana. Please kindly unmute and go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, sir.
And good afternoon, doctor.
You're welcome, sir.
I want to ask a question, and the question is centered on what is the relationship between the mind and the soul?
The mind and the
soul.
Sorry, I'm not hearing that last word very well. Can you?
The mind and the soul. Soul. S-O-U-L.
S. Okay, the soul.
Yes.
This is why you're asking very deep questions now. Okay, I will still answer it anyway. Thank you. Okay, thank you for that question. All right, please, Mr. Okini Victor, kindly ask your question. Please, Mr. Okini Victor. Please, can you go ahead, sir? I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
All right, please go ahead.
I want to know at what level.
Your voice is very far. I can barely hear you.
I want to know at which level of emotion does the emotional hijack take place?
At which level does emotional hijack take place?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okay. We'll just take 2 questions, please. Odunayo, I will take your question in the next section. All right, so Mr. Joseph Ajani asked a question. He said, or you could put your question in the chat room, I will take it up from there. He asked the question, he said, what's the relationship between the mind and the soul? All right. Okay, so research shows that man is a tripartite being. Okay, that's 3 in 1. Tripartite being. So there is spirit, there is soul, and there is the body. Where the body is seen as the mover of both the spirit and the soul. And the spirit is assumed to be the one that relates with the external forces beyond the natural force. And then the soul is seen as the seat of wisdom, the seat of reason. So the actual man is the soul. So the mind is resident in the soul. So the mind of a man is in the soul of the man. So somehow the soul is the middleman between the spirit and the body. The soul is the middleman. That's why we say the mind is the seat of judgment. Okay, the mind is the seat of judgment. Somehow it is believed that what the body sends in, receives as information, the soul decides on it, and the spirit bears the consequences afterwards. All right, so somehow your question is what's the relationship between the mind and the soul. So the mind is in the soul, and the soul is the real human, the you in you, the you of you, the you with you, and all of the you is your soul. So when we say feed your mind, we actually say you feed your soul with the right information. All right. Mr. Joseph, did I say anything reasonable? Please, if I did, you can say.
Yes, you did.
All right. Thank you. Okay. The other question was, at what point does emotional hijack take place? All right. You see, let's go back to this chart. There are 4 stages there. It begins with the information or the event that pushes the trigger or that you perceive as trigger. As soon as that information comes by and it is not managed and it begins to generate that strong feeling, emotional hijack is already taking place. If that trigger comes in and the mind does not have sufficient substantial information to counteract the consequence or counteract further actions from taking place, imaginary hijack is already in the process. So it starts with the trigger, which could be an information, which could be an event going to your mind or going to your brain first, and then passing down to the last stage of feeling regret. All right. And remember, like I said, emotional hijack becomes much more obvious if there is lack of substantial information in your mind to take care of those triggers that could be coming in. All right. Okay. Thank you so much. Now let's proceed very fast. It's almost 1 o'clock. Now let's put a look at the categorization of people. In dealing with people, according to this class, we have the hostile aggressive people, we have the complainers, we have the unresponsive people, we have the super agreeable people, we have the negative people, we have the indecisive people. Hostile aggressive people, complainers, unresponsive people, super agreeable people, negative people, indecisive people. Now we're looking at them on the pessimistic side, or not on the optimistic side. All right. Now, the hostile aggressive people, the people in this category have a general feeling of hostility towards other people and openly voice their opinions in an aggressive manner. The best way to deal with people of this category is to give them the space and time to voice and express their opinions openly and clearly. After you might have let them vent out their opinions, you can then move on to solving the problem by asking for their cooperation and keep them in the loop. Now, one of the basic ways to dealing with emotional hijack is also to allow space between the actions and reactions. So if you don't really know what to do in times of emotional hijack or triggers, the best thing is not do anything. Okay, the best thing to do in circumstances of emotional hijack, or you begin to receive those triggers that could lead to emotional hijack, the best thing is don't do anything. Okay, so keep your mouth shut. If it's possible, close your eyes. Make sure you don't receive any further information to your brain. Close your ears. Make sure you don't receive any further information to the brain that could cause the trigger to progress. Okay. Okay. Now, for this hostile aggressive people too, if they are talking and you're responding, your response becomes a trigger and could result to emotional hijack. So the best way is to allow them to vent their anger. And most often when they are done venting the anger, whatever thing you say afterwards will be accepted. But if you want to say anything when they are still talking, you could trigger emotional hijack. Then the second category of people there are the complainers. The people in this category are those who are relentless, chronic complainers. The best way to deal with people of this category is acknowledge their complaints by paraphrasing it. Also, you should make sure people get out of their complaining mood and see reality. For this purpose, you should assign fact-finding tasks to such people. Okay. Then the unresponsive people, the people in this category tend to be closed and uncooperative. So no matter what you say or do, it will be difficult to get them to cooperate and take an active part in anything. The best way to deal with the people of this category is to have open, friendly discussions with them and ask open-ended questions to find out their opinions and the reason for their inhibitions. Then you should get them to open up. Then you have the super agreeable people. The people in this category tend to be yes men. They tend to agree to everything that you say and to all your opinions and ideas. However, they will never act on anything that they agreed on. The best way to deal with the people in this category is to actually get to know them better and work on trying to find out the real reason that prevents them from taking action. So these are some of the categories of people we have. They will have the negative people. No matter what you say, is no, it's just they are just pessimistic. Okay, there are some people that will say Nigeria can never get better, Africa can never get better. Well, why that could seem like a little reality, you could also tell yourself something different. Africa may never get better, but me, myself, and I will keep getting better. Okay, the situation may keep getting worse, but I will keep getting better. All right. So it is better that way. All right. So the people in this category tend to be pessimists. Hence, they will tend to see the negative or the downside in every discussion or argument. This negativity causes a fear in them, which prevents them from acting. The best way to deal with people of this category is to help them overcome their negativity and fear by presenting them with actual facts and then answer all their problems and objections as questions. They have the indecisive people. The people in this category tend to be indecisive and lack the power to make decisions on their own. Such people are not sure of their own capabilities and lack self-confidence. The best way to deal with people of this category is to listen carefully and patiently to any clues that they give in their conversation as to the reason for their reservations, and then offer extra support to instill confidence in them. All right, so we in different leadership capacities face all these people daily. So we have provided solutions on how to deal with these people. Don't go shouting on them. Don't go slapping to reset their brain, because that will be a violation of human rights. Make sure you use the right approach to deal with the right people. If you're working as a project manager, all of these people could be found in your team. Even if they are not found in your team, they could be found in your stakeholder categories. So find out each of these people, your stakeholder domain or your team domain, and then find the best approach to deal with them. If you're a lecturer, of course, you have several of these categories in your class. You have several of these categories in your co-lecturers. Okay, you have different categories of people. All you need to do is use the best approach right now to deal with each of them, so that you will maintain the highest level of peace, decorum, professionalism in your work. Okay, if you have 20 friends, as it were, or perhaps you could set up a table of the kind of people that come alongside your way. So you could have a table of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Yes, 6 people. You know, psychologically, it shouldn't take you more than 30 seconds to know who a person is. If it takes you longer than that, that means you need to build your psychological skills. Psychologically, it shouldn't take you more than 30 seconds to know, even if the person is pretending. It shouldn't take you more than 30 seconds to know who a person is. So if you know the person, you can say, okay, this person is hostile, this person is complainer, this person is unresponsive, this person negative. So if it takes you more than 30 seconds, give yourself 30 minutes. On further interactions, you'll be able to find out the category. And then by finding out the category, you know how to manage the person. If these categories of persons make any sense to you or you understand them, please can you type 1 in the chat room? If you understood these people, can you type 1 in the chat room? Can you type one in the chat room? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Okay. We're receiving some kind of information in the chat room. Someone says he applied for this course because he saw ND. I'm not sure is this program that specified MD. This is an executive program. It is not an examination-based program. So for examination-based programs, we have OND categories, all right? We have degree and other categories. So please, there is no, this is not for ND program. It's not for ND holders, please. It's not for OND holders. It's not for SSCE holders. It's not for NCE holders. Even if you've worked for 200 years, if you don't have a degree, you don't have a HND, you don't have, that's the basic. If you don't have that, then this opportunity could be for your learning, all right? It's not for ND, it's not for NCE, it's not for SSCE, it's not for GCE, it's not for WAEC. The basic requirement is BSc. Even if your BSc is third class, it doesn't count for us. So even if it's BSc, there's no problem. Sorry, third class, there's no problem. But you just have to have a degree or a HND for this. But please, even if you have HND or NCE, please feel free to learn. All right, please feel free to learn. At least it will guide you. So in subsequent time, you can come back for your certifications. All right. Okay, thank you. Now let's look at the difference between high IQ and high EQ. Very quickly, given the table below, high IQ and high EQ. For person with high IQ, the person is always condescending. The person with high EQ committed to people and causes. Person with high IQ is always looking like we are not in the same class. Okay, we are not in the same class. You're not supposed to be here, and all of that. Okay, someone is asking a very wonderful question. Say, what is the relationship between personality typologies and EI? Yes, we will still get to that category. We still look at that. There is a class on that, personality traits and emotional intelligence. We'll look at that. Okay. Then the person with high IQ is critical. Person with high EQ is poised. Person with high IQ is uncomfortable with sensuality. Person with high EQ is comfortable with themselves. Person with high IQ is emotionally bland. Person with high EQ is sympathetic and caring. Person with high IQ is inhibited. Person with high EQ is outgoing. So apart from your first class, which is high IQ, you need to also balance it with a high EQ. Having a high IQ and high EQ will give you a very super successful life. It will give you a super successful life. So that we are teaching emotional intelligence does not mean that we are talking down on high IQ, all right? But having to build your emotional intelligence and build your intellectual intelligence, you will be a superstar. Okay, you will be a superstar. So let it not be one-sided. Okay. Let it not be one-sided. We must create a balance. Okay. Remember, it is character and capacity, not character only. So capacity is the IQ we are talking about, and character is the EQ. So it is character and capacity. High IQ and high EQ will give us a balanced life. All right. It will give us a balanced life, and you'll be super successful. All right. Then let's look at emotional intelligence importance in the workplace. It is applied in selection, it is applied in the enrollment, it is applied in the success of the organization. Now, quickly, in selection, emotional intelligence can be carefully used to get selected in an organization and to prove oneself better than the other candidates in an interview. A survey conducted by the National US Department of Labor has found that in today's times, organizations are increasingly listing emotional competencies as criteria for new hires. Okay, I've just been reminded, there is also a professional diploma for this course. So if you have an NCE or what do you call it, NCE or OND, please, you can go for the professional diploma, not the certified associate emotional intelligence professional, and not for certified senior emotional intelligence. So if you are really interested in certification, you will get the professional diploma, which you can submit your CV and the registrar will follow you up. Okay, so if you are really interested, if you have less than BSc, just know that it is not the professional certification you're getting, but you will get a professional diploma. All right. Okay. Another survey conducted by the Graduate Management Admission Council has found that most companies today are seeking MBAs with high emotional intelligence. So look at it. It is not just the high capacity only, but both high capacity and high emotional intelligence. MBAs with high emotional intelligence. Then we have the derailment. High emotional intelligence can greatly be used to prevent the derailment or total collapse of one's career. A study conducted by the Center for Creative Leadership found that a majority of the executives who faced derailment or total collapse of their career displayed certain common traits. These traits were extreme rigidity in dealing with people, poor relationships with their team members, and the inability to lead teams. So anybody that is having this kind of issue could have great possibility of derailment in career. Now, another study conducted by Egon Zender found that the majority of managers who derailed had high levels of IQ, expertise, and intelligence. However, the cause of the derailment of their career was attributed to their arrogance and disdain for teamwork, which is just evidence of absence of emotional intelligence. Then we have success. Emotional intelligence. High emotional intelligence can be greatly useful to achieve unparalleled success at your workplace. Several studies conducted on Harvard graduates and foreign service officers has found that the test scores of the candidates' entrance exam did not always match the success in their careers. And that's why most organizations are listing emotional intelligence competencies now as a requirement rather than the high IQ. High IQ remains valid for recruitment, but it is now on the basis of character and capacity, no longer capacity, and then we'll now start looking for character. All right. Hey, Magba conducted a study on hundreds of executives at 15 global organizations, including Pepsi, IBM, and Volvo. Magba found that emotional competencies formed 2/3 of the competencies that are considered essential to success at the workplace. Also, an analysis of 181 jobs in 121 organizations was done by Daniel Goldman. Goldman found that emotional competencies were the best differentiators between star performance and average performance. So if organizations like Pepsi, IBM, Volvo, Google, and others are using emotional intelligence competencies in their decisions as to who gets to be their executive, who gets to be their worker, then it's therefore important that we need to put that, or we need to consider that as important for us. Okay, we need to consider that as important for us. You should hire employees with high levels of EQ rather than traditional job screening tests. Hiring employees with high levels of EQ increases your chance of hiring the right people the first time and reduces employee turnover, which results in high cost savings. Now, quickly, let's look at this real life example to understand how emotional intelligence can help in building a more safe and happy workplace. Now, Leonard Industries was a leading manufacturer of stained glass. Its stained glass was the best in the market. Leonard held the single largest market share in the stained glass industry. However, lately there were several issues arising in Leonard's manufacturing plants. There were complaints filed by several plant workers that the supervisors just did not listen to them or try to understand their problems. Whenever a worker approached any supervisor with their problem, the supervisor would just state the company rules and policies and not try to understand the issue. As a result, there were many accidents taking place on the plant due to the lack of proper guidance from supervisors to the workers. The matter escalated up to Jake Winham, the vice president of operations. Jake decided or discussed the supervisor's attitude issue with Kate Rose, who was Jake's friend and also the vice president of Human Resource Department. Kate analyzed the situation and felt that the supervisors in question lacked basic understanding and human management skills. Kate suggested that the supervisors should be trained in EI competencies related to listening to employees, understanding them, and also helping them have the self-confidence to solve simple problems on their own. Now, Jack coordinated with the HR department and had a comprehensive training program developed for training all supervisors across the plant in EI competencies. After just 1 month of the trained supervisors being placed back on the plant, the former complaints started to decrease. Eventually, the former complaints were reduced by almost 85%. Moreover, the plant surpassed its production goals by almost 35%. Also, the number of accidents and the lost time due to those accidents increased drastically. The accident and the lost time due to those accidents eventually dropped to a negligible number. Therefore, you can understand that the emotional intelligence plays a crucial role in the overall successful operation at any workplace. It also leads to a safer and happier work environment in a manufacturing context. Hence, you can see that emotional intelligence is important for any work environment where two people are deemed to interact with each other. All right, so this is just a case study, and I perceive we understand that. Now, for all of our lecturers here, we are going to have an assignment to ourselves. From the chat room, I saw that there are lecturers from University of Lagos, there are lecturers from University of Ibadan, and lecturers from University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Please, you can feel free to introduce your university. Feel free. Please, those of us that are lecturers, I am particularly keen on those in psychology. This news of everyday lecturer getting sacked because of sexual molestation, I think there is need for us in this kind of environment to begin to build curriculum and partner with the University Advancement Center and begin to organize emotional intelligence training that will save the career of these lecturers. Sometimes somebody could say it's spiritual attack. It's not spiritual attack, it's just lack of emotional intelligence, all right? Even if it's spiritual attack, you have enough information to deal with that before it deals with you. So let's start, let's schedule with University Advancement Center. I think last year I was supposed to have a training like this with University Advancement Center at UNN on this particular issue. I think UNN is doing a very great work in that regard. And then in the University of Lagos, we partnered with Center for Information and Technology Systems at University of Lagos, and then they brought in the University Consult. And we're also providing trainings in this category too. All right. But for those of us, whether IPM is in your university or not, please, our lecturers, start with your department first. Organize with your HOD. Let's have a tete-a-tete emotional intelligence training with lecturers. Organize it, have them, you've already attended the training, so teach them what you've learned. If you want us to come and train for you, no problem. Invite us, tell us the date, and we'll be there. All right? But let the awareness start growing. Then in your workplace, something happened here. The last set of training we did here, someone was sharing his experience this morning. He said he volunteered for Nigeria American University or Nigeria University America, the one in Yola, Adamawa State. Okay, he volunteered for them, and They now set up a committee. He just volunteered, okay, but at the end of the day, the university vice chancellor set up a committee for him. Said they now became 5-man committee. He's not a lecturer there. He just recommended to them, and the VC set up a committee where he's going to be working with the committee to handle some issues as this. The person is a secondary school teacher in Adamawa State, but after the training, he picked up courage and decided to do a volunteer work, do a proposal to that university, and they picked him. And he told me this morning, he said, if he's able to do the work very well, that he might end up landing a job at the university. I said, well, just do your best. Our own is to support you wherever you have the need. Still this week, the last set of people that finished this training, one of them from Lagos State, his name is Ridwan. He called and called within the week, but the week was somehow very busy. So was it on Thursday? We now spoke. It said that Thursday he was having a meeting with the chairman of the Lagos State Transport something. The chairman, the person in charge of Lagos State Transport whatsoever. I said, okay, so what's about it? He said he proposed a training for them, and the chairman was impressed and called him to come for defense. I was like, that's good. Now, you don't need a certificate to do this. All you need is to understand that emotional intelligence is working. It can work wonders for any organization, and then you put that up to any organization you feel like need it, okay? And you can land yourself an opportunity to train them. Now, one of the ladies or one of the women, let me not say ladies, one of the women that took this course, she happens to be a branch manager in a bank, and she proposed this to her company, and she said that day, their area manager gave her 10,000 naira for proposing the training and coming to enlighten him on the training. The man gave her 10,000 naira to go and eat. Okay, and she said the knowledge that she had gathered from emotional intelligence training had helped her in her career. With or without certificate, it is not our concern. Our concern is that you should build the capacity to deliver your work. If you don't have interest in consulting in EI or practicing EI, then there is no need for the certificate, right? If you have interest in consulting, or you think, okay, it could be a great advantage to your career, okay, maybe that could be considered. But I don't think certificate should be your basic criteria before you say you will practice, or you teach somebody, or before you say you will understand it. No. All right. Okay. So I sincerely believe that after this class, someone else will go back in his department and then begin to formulate some kind of trainings and agree with the HOD, and then begin to dish out these trainings. And what if your department now begin to be the one handling the training? Now, for those lecturers in psychology, I'm really keen on the issue of this, because you can, I don't know whether your own department have an institute, but your department can further go and register an institute for trainings on psychology trainings, and then begin to train the whole university community and all of the other people in the private sector on this issue. You will go a long way in helping organizations solve problems, and that problem of human management. What I'm saying, does it make sense? The next salary you will get your or before you get your next salary, get your co-lecturers that think alongside with you, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then begin to draft out curriculum, draft out articles of association, go to CAC, register. That salary you will use to register that institute will become an investment of a lifetime. You will keep earning from it, you will keep reaping from it. Now, as I round up this class, while we are in class, I received a call. A call came through from one of my professor friends at the University of Nigeria. He has been he's my mentor and a friend. Okay. Now, sometimes 2019, he traveled to US for a training. And while he was there, we were communicating. And then when he came back, I asked if he could join IPM faculty, at least assist in training other people. And he said, why not? So he joined our faculty. Now, in that 2019, he told me everything he learned, but there was one thing he said. He said, but these things are not applicable in Nigeria. He said, mindset. You traveled all the way from Nigeria. You paid tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars to go and do a course, came back to Nigeria, and then you're telling me, but it's not applicable in Nigeria. So why did you go there? Now, he had to travel from UNN to Abuja and was sat down. I said, Prof, you have enough in you to keep depending on salary. I think by now, salary should be like, if it comes, good. If it doesn't come, you still live your life comfortably. And by the time we were done, we developed some articles of association and a whole structure for an institute that was going to be running a training in UNN. And he is going to be the director of that training, of that institute. Now, whether he gets to remain a professor for life or not, whether he dies now or not, he has already created something that will always bring something to the family. That is called turning your salary to investment package. Did you get what I just said now? Okay, did you get what I just said now? I said, I gave 3 advices when I started this class. Number 1, make sure that your salary becomes a capital rather than salary. It's not an expenditure, it's a seed. Number 2, make sure that this capital is invested. Make sure that you put interest in investment. And number 3, change your mindset. No matter what we teach you here, it will not profit you until you change your mindset. Changing the mindset that, yes, this knowledge can make me somewhat better off. All right? And that is awesome. And this is where we are going to stop this class. So when we come back, by 2 o'clock, we will continue. Now, we'll just take 2 or 3 questions, and then we'll be rounding up. All right, I'll be handing over to the coordinator from here. Please, coordinator, over to you.
All right, many thanks indeed once more for an awesome class. All right, so we're going to take just 2 questions before we go on a break. So please, the first 2 persons. Okay, Odunayo Kuye, your hand has been up. So let's start from you. All right, your mic is open now. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. I would just like to ask, where do we place obsession when it has to do with triggers?
Okay.
Obsession, like people who are obsessed about maybe another person, and because of that, they do certain things, they misbehave or do extreme things. So where do we place obsession when we're talking about emotional triggers?
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that beautiful question. Remember, I said emotional hijack can be temporary, which more of is the one we are focusing on. But it can also be a sustained, Where it becomes sustained, that's where we now see things like obsession. Okay, that's where we now see things like obsession. So to avoid or to reduce the cycle, the length, the duration involved in the emotional hijack cycle, it is important that the person involved get to seek for counsel. Okay, get to seek for counseling, the right counseling. If not, that obsession could, the thing is, you build on, you got a trigger that led to the first obsession, right? Now, if you keep that obsession, your mind will accept that obsession for further triggers. So that obsession will become the foundation for judgment. So it's not, at some point, it will no longer be a trigger. It will now become the judgment itself. So to avoid getting from emotional hijack, temporary basis, to becoming on sustained basis like obsession, is good we seek for counseling. Okay, but obsession is still part of emotional hijack, just that it is now on a sustained basis. Okay, please, does that make sense to you, Mark?
Yes, thank you very much, sir.
All right, thank you so much too.
All right. Thank you. Let's have Deborah Aja. All right, if you can hear me, you can unmute your mic and go ahead with your question. Hello, Deborah, can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. You can proceed.
Okay. I have a few questions. First of all, I want to appreciate the speaker. Thank you for the lecture.
Thank you too.
So I have a few questions to ask. I don't know how to put my question, but I hope it makes sense. The first question is, you mentioned something about being responsible for your outcome, which is a sign of having very high emotional intelligence.
That's right.
So in a situation where you find yourself in a situation where someone keeps how will I use that word now, suppressing your efforts such that you are not able to bring forth much productivity. I don't know how to put the question. And you eventually, I don't know if you understand my question.
Yeah, I get your question. I think that question is your current question in all of the EI classes.
Okay, so that's my question. So when you keep saying, okay, you're responsible for your outcome, but you keep getting people who are out there just to, pull you down, and you are trying your effort to do your best. So how do you place, where do you stand in such situation? Now, my second question is on emotional hijack. And I think you mentioned that it is a situation where the part of brain, where your brain kind of bypasses your normal reasoning, if I'm to paraphrase what you said, where you can,
I see that,
where you
Deborah.
process, okay, where you process what is happening to you. So my question is, what is the place of okay, when I don't process what is happening to me, like if something happens and I'm just and I don't take action, isn't that apathy, where you just do not take any decision, where you are just laid back?
Okay, so I said in the point of emotional hijack, don't take any action, right? That's what I said, right? No, that's what I said. I remember saying that. What I actually mean is, don't take actions that you will regret. And I said, more of what you could do at that point is, if it's possible, close your eyes, close your ears, close your mouth. Make sure you don't receive any further information that would continue to trigger that hijack. All right, that's what I said. Now, if the hijack is temporary, within 5-10 minutes, you are out of it. That's if you did not allow the trigger to advance. Let's take, for instance, someone insulted you, and you don't know the intention of the person, and all of a sudden you reacted to the person, and the person reacted back. You see, the hijack is growing. He's talking, you're talking, he's talking, you're talking. At some point, it could lead to a slap or some kind of physical combat, and that is the one we don't want to achieve. All right, but if the person insults you, just like that question today, like if one of those people that they slap and they do nothing, yeah, they do nothing because they don't want to be hijacked. They don't want their emotions to be hijacked. So when I say don't do anything, what I mean is don't do anything that your brain will force you to do. Maybe tell you slap the person or respond rudely or all of that. That could lead to further emotional hijack.
Okay, so what if it keeps reoccurring? What if that
then that means.
What should be your response in that regard?
Okay, I'll answer that question now. You remember I spoke about stuffing your mind with the right information, right? Writing your commandments and laying it to heart.
Okay.
So if
yes,
if what you have seen or what happened had become a trigger, then you must settle in your subconscious mind the action you will take if such happens. Let's take, for instance, they don't pay salary by 28th of March and they didn't pay it by 5th of April. What will you do? If they didn't pay salary by 28th of March, obviously some tension will start rising, right? And they didn't pay it by April 5th. My. If you get to work and they say, why are you coming late? You're ready to kill somebody, is it not? But you can write your commandment and say, this is what I will do. So while others are frowning, getting angry, you can say, no, I am going to take it on the other side. And that will help you better with performance and productivity. Right? Okay, so that's the three questions, right? So I'll answer the first one now, which is what will you do when someone keeps
stifling your creativity, like someone put it there?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So number one, the issue we have is the issue of association. Now, if you are the one in charge of the association, you can decide to walk out, right? You can decide to dissociate yourself from the association. But if the person is in charge of the association, then you must find alternative approaches to dealing with such issues. If the person is your supervisor and you're not ready to quit that job, remember, in every standard organization, we have what we call the HR complaint section. You have to write, if possible, anonymously to the HR complaint center. Let them know that such thing is happening and then they can take it up. Now, in a case where the person you want to write about is not in charge of the HR complaint center, you still write it anyway. Or perhaps you look at the organizational structure. If there are other models of communication to deal with such, then you must find out. Every organization have their rules and regulation on bullying, on frustrating people, on dealing with people inappropriately. Look at your organization, although in small and medium-sized organizations, they basically do not have that. But in well-established organizations, there is always what we call the HR complaint center. And what they basically do is select or accept complaints. They deal with complaints, grievances, and all of that, counseling and all of that. That's their work. So if your organization has such, you can follow such. If your organization does not have such, that means you're already working in a small, medium scale. Then you may have to dissociate yourself to avoid killing yourself there.
All right. Thank you very much, sir.
All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much. I think, moderator, is this the last question for the day? So that
yes, our time is actually up, but we still have one more person.
Okay. Can we take that question when we return, so that we can go on break?
All right. Okay, sorry, Joseph Ajani. We'll take your question when we come back. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please, the attendance list has already been passed. Please ensure to sign your attendance, and we'll see you by 2 p.m. 2 p.m. If you wish to submit your resume for consideration, if you are going for certification, please kindly submit your resume to membership@iipmi.org for consideration. Okay, please kindly send it there, and the registrar will follow up on you. Thank you so much. Please, moderator, any information before we go?
Okay, someone wanted to know the kind of information that should be supplied.
Yes, I said your resume should carry at least 3 things. Number one, your professional, your educational background, your professional background, and then your work experience. Those are the 3 major things we are looking at, because those are the things we need to make the decisions. Your work experience, your professional experience, and your educational experience. There is no definite order. We just want to be sure that the number of years needed for qualification by experience, you have it, and then the number of the preferred qualification needed for certification is also there. So educational background, professional background, and then work experience background. All right, thank you so much. I think we are now behind schedule. Please, the attendance is passed once again. If you've not signed the
I've
attendance,
said
please.
it again.
Yes, please. The attendance is passed over and over now. If you have an issue, sign your attendance direct from here. Please just go to ipmi.org/EI attendance. Okay. iipmi.org/EI attendance. Just sign the attendance. And that's all. All right. So I think we can call it a day from here. See you by 2 o'clock. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.